I'm Arlan Hamilton, and I'm the founder and managing partner of Backstage Capital. Backstage Capital and I represent access, resources, and conviction. In this part of the course, I'm going to teach you about setting up your company for success from day one. It's incredibly imperative that when you're starting your company, you start off with a solid foundation. There's going to be so much out of your control, really from day one, that you want to have the most control possible, the earliest possible. So setting up foundation is paramount. I can think of nothing more important than knowing your stuff going into starting any company. As much time as you can take on that research and development, that is not just you sitting on the couch and waiting for opportunity to happen, the better. And by that I mean you're reading books, you're reading trade publications, you're keeping up with the latest interviews, you know the industry news, and very importantly, you know your competition and what they're up to. Coming into this and opening a website and getting an LLC and just saying everything's going to work out because I believe it's going to work out just doesn't cut it. Have to think about what does your customer need, what does your customer want, and very important is to talk to your customer. Even before you have a dollar in or out, talking to your customers is so important. So I'm looking at books. I'm looking at daily records of what is the news in my industry and around my industry. It's not necessarily going to be directly related all the time. Can I answer questions, not only from investors, because they're actually really not the most important people here. Can I answer questions to myself, to my team, to my future team, to my customer? These are the important steps you have to take, and there are ways that you can start now. I would say this is more important than raising any amount of money and doing any kind of tech, any kind of design, is understanding your lane better than anybody else. An example of this in research and development is I didn't just go knocking on the doors of potential investors and saying, hey, I have this idea, I have this theory, this thesis, can you give me money for it? I spent even more time interviewing companies and their founders, interviewing the people who are on the ground starting new companies so that I would know what they needed in the moment, and if that changed over time, because I was working on this for years before I had a check sent to me. So it's in that I also researched, I don't know, maybe it was definitely hundreds of hours, it could have been thousands of hours, where I researched and learned about investing, about what companies need to survive, what they need to get started, all the players, all the jargon, everything that you could think of, I was learning about. And again, going out there and talking to who was eventually my customer. My customer as an investor was the founder that I was going to be investing in. So I knew what they needed, what they were looking for, what was important to them, what was lacking, what resources were a gap that my company could then fill. And I talked to as many investors and current investors, past and present, that I could find. And I wasn't afraid to ask questions that seemed maybe to be dumb questions, which actually there's no such thing. I wasn't afraid to talk to people who were not the direct, the big person that had all the name brand recognition. I was talking to their people, who was around them, who's surrounding them. All those things get you a step closer to the knowledge. I say become money, right? If you don't have it, you become it. And the way you do that is you build the asset of you. You can control how much information you get in a day, how much information you take in, how much experience you get for yourself. You can control that. You may not be able to control how much money you have or if people are taking you seriously, but you can control, I know this more than anybody else around me, and that's why I should be doing it. I actually started a company recently myself, and I took all these principles that I tell people about and things that I've kind of learned along the way, and I use it right now starting my company from scratch. One of the things I did first and foremost is I took a survey of hundreds and hundreds of people who would become part of the company, who would be someone who would benefit from the company if it were to take off. And I asked them, Was I right about my thesis? I felt a certain way. I thought something was missing in the market. Was I right? And it was taking that relatively free survey, and all it took was my time, which is money, right? But it took my initiative and my time, and asking over and over again different people, asking them several questions, getting to know them, interviewing them, and then rinse and repeat. So I did that before I went out to anybody else to start, before I got in touch with a developer, before I decided what the website was going to be called, before it had a true foundation. It had that research and development. And I continued to do that every day to keep me sharp and to keep me on the right path to knowing that I'm doing the right thing. It's not necessarily you're asking your customer, is this okay? Is this what you want? Am I doing this right? You're asking them, what are you lacking? So that you can understand, you can take that data and you can analyze that data and understand, what can I offer them that they are lacking? When you get started with your company, there are definitely things that you should know. And you should be familiar with the terms, the jargon, acronyms that are within your industry and within your lane. Another thing you need to know is, what do the slide decks of your competition look like? What is a deck to begin with? If you don't know these terms, this is a good time to pause and go check out online what these words mean. Now, a deck is a presentation that you give usually to a potential investor. Sometimes you use it for sales, sometimes you use it to bring on employees. But it is a PDF, a file of several slides that tells people about your company. Who's the team? What are you trying to solve? What is the problem at hand? How are you going to solve it? What are your metrics? Who else is involved? Things like that. And it's really important. It's almost table stakes at this point to have a slide deck. It's called deck for short. And it's really important to have that set up and at least know what it is to present to several potential stakeholders in your company. How do you position yourself to take advantage of a gap in the market? It's important to understand what investors are looking for in companies in your space, whether or not you go out looking for investment. What does it take for companies in your space to get acquired, to be bought, or to IPO, to go public? What are the commonalities between companies that dominate your sector right now? These are some of the things you need to keep in mind when you're getting started and before we're thinking about them in the foundation of your company. So ultimately, laying that foundation, the roadmap, the playbook, if you will, is fundamental to having a North Star of where you're going to go next. What does the big picture look like? And you have to start here. It's important to catalyze a group of individuals who reflect the current world, because there's a lot of time to make up for. The time is now, and that's why I call my book, It's About Damn Time. I'm going to be covering several topics in this course. One of them is approaching angel investors. We'll also talk about the fundamentals of starting a company, and we'll get into successfully pitching your idea. Some of the core attributes to being a successful investor, you have to have your eyes open. You have to have a pulse on things. It's a lot like being someone who discovers new music or discovers the next best thing. You have to have an open mind, be flexible in your thinking, be creative, really want companies to succeed, want to find a way to say yes rather than no, even though you're going to be saying no far more than yes. Successful businesses are rarely started by accident. So taking everything you've just learned and more and doing your research is going to get you there.